This episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics recorded August 26th, 2018. You can find Derek and Matt Love Comics on Podbean, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play Music, TuneIn, and you can contact us at derekandmattlovecomics@gmail.com. Find us on facebook.com/derekandmatt, on Twitter @derekandmatt, on Instagram @derekandmatt, and on YouTube @Derek and Matt Love Comics. Well, welcome to another episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics, the podcast where two friends talk about comics and movies. I'm your host, Derek, and with me as always is my partner in crime fighting also, Matt.
Hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are first in their division today.
Was that intended to rhyme?
It's from a famous song about the Cubs.
Are you sure it's really famous? Because I've never heard about it. Is this a Chicago thing?
It's definitely a Chicago thing. It's from the song Go Cubs Go. The normal line is, hey Chicago, what do you say? The Cubs are going to win today. But I amended it because the Cubs are first in their division today.
Well, that is something to toot about.
Man, you just stepped all over this.
Yo, we didn't prepare for this. Before we started recording, you said, I'm going to be talking about the Cubs. And I said, that's fine. I didn't know you had something prepared.
I always have something prepared.
Do you?
I do, actually, yes. That's why I'm kind of, not to toot my own horn, but that's why I'm kind of good at this. So...
Meanwhile, I'm barely prepared for this episode, and I'm hosting.
Hey, I didn't say anything about you, one way or the other.
It's kind of like you're the one who should be doing the hosting most of the time.
I am eating almonds in between pressing the mute button, so...
Okay, that explains that. So, Matt, other than almonds and the Cubs, what's going on with you this week?
Well, I got a PBR open, so that adds into the almonds and the Cubs. What's going on with me? I read some comics. I read Amazing Spider-Man 4, continues to be good. I'm really liking it. It sort of occurred to me that you guys have heard me allude to my creator-owned idea that I've messed with from time to time. And it's sort of like a Venture Brothers style parody where you kind of make fun of the comic tropes. But it's occurred to me that some of my favorite comics now, including Amazing Spider-Man, are doing just that in an actual mainstream comic. There's a lot of making fun of comic tropes in this book. So, it was really good. Avengers 6 finished off their starting storyline. It was really good. We got the second issue of Life of Captain Marvel. Same thing I said about the first one. I thought it was excellent. I have a hard time recommending it because it's heavy material. However, we did set up that she's going to be punching a supervillain next issue, so it's not all just going to be her lamenting about her terrible life. Action Comics number 1002. Bendis still, he loves writing Perry White. He does really good Clark Kent stuff. There's an interesting story going on here. I'm really happy with all this Bendis Superman. A couple other things that I did. I watched the Deadpool Super Duper cut, which is the extended cut that comes with the Blu-ray. The Blu-ray actually comes with both versions of the movie.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the Blu-ray came with both or if you had to buy them separately.
My Blu-ray came with both. I'm sure there are versions that probably come with just the regular version, but
I figure that's probably the DVD.
Yeah. So I liked the film in the theater. I think I remember saying that I liked it more than the first one. I did. So that's all good. The thing about the Super Duper cut for me was I didn't really notice a lot different. And then I went back and I found a listing online that had a list of everything that was different. And it's like a full 15 minutes of extra stuff. And I guess I just didn't remember the movie as well as I thought I did, because I clearly saw this stuff in the second time I saw it, but I didn't realize it was new. So some of it I did. But, I didn't... The full 15 minutes worth, I did not realize was new.
Okay, I haven't seen the movie, but we discussed this the other day, and I thought the impression I got from whenever you were telling me about the differences was that it wasn't so much a lot of new scenes. It was basically just longer shots and more lingering bits and extra moments within scenes.
I think there was only one scene that was entirely new on its own, and it was like 5 seconds long. It was funny, but it was like 5 seconds long. It's literally the Juggernaut and Fire Fist walking out of a mall with a trail of destruction behind them, and Fire Fist saying, "I can't believe we couldn't find anything in both of our sizes. I really wanted a match." And that's the scene.
Oh my god, they totally should have been in matching suits, like twins.
Yeah, I mean, that was the implication. So, but the rest of it was like, yeah, a lot of the fight scenes were longer and bloodier, and the fight scene in the strip club is a little bit longer with actual nudity. A lot of there's the scene where they're driving to the X mansion, and Deadpool is accusing Cable of being racist is much longer. A lot of it is just longer joke sequences. A few places it's using an alternate joke than what was actually in the theatrical version. From a different take, you know.
I'm just gonna digress here for just a moment, but what you just said, that the extended cut, which I'm assuming is unrated,
I believe so,
has nudity in the strip club scene, whereas the R-rated theatrical version did not have nudity. I just think it's funny how much things have changed, where you can have an R-rated movie today and you're not allowed to have nudity in it, whereas 35 years ago you could have PG films that had nudity.
Well, didn't the first film have nudity in it in the regular cut? There's only one cut of the first film. Pretty sure it does in the strip club.
You know, honestly, I don't remember. I only watched it the one time. But I mean, when we were kids.
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Clash of the Titans had topless scenes. That was a PG film, and that was what, 81?
Planet of the Apes has male nudity, and it's rated G. So
yeah, times definitely have changed.
But I've repeatedly watched the ending fight with Juggernaut. Like, I watched it like 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I mean, I like this one better than the first one by far, and there's a lot to enjoy in there. And I think they get a lot of the stuff that I had a problem with in the first film, they smooth out in this film. And the Juggernaut's just really freaking cool.
Okay, I have not seen this movie, but you were rewatching it while we were talking over Skype, so I kept hearing the film. What was that? Tuesday night, right?
Yes.
And it actually did seem, it sounded funnier to me than the first. I did not like the first film, but I was, so I wasn't exactly looking forward to this one. But some of the stuff I've heard and then hearing the film play while you were watching it actually has me interested in actually getting the film. So I'm thinking, I don't know, I might wait till the Blu-ray drops down in price in a few months, but I can actually see myself buying it at some point now, even though I dislike the first.
The last thing I did was I watched, caught up on this season of Venture Brothers, and man, this last episode was a lot to take in. They did that thing that Venture Brothers does and can do really well, where they tied together a bunch of loose storylines from the last year or so, but at the same time it ended up tying up stuff that we didn't even know needed to be tied up, and going back and referencing stuff all the way back to the first season, and just like showing you how, like, oh, this thing that you saw 7 seasons ago that you thought was throwaway was really, really important for this reason.
The thing about that I've always wondered is, did they actually have that kind of stuff planned that far in advance when they actually started the show? Or is it just stuff where they're working on today and they realize, hey, we could actually connect this to that thing?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
It could be both, I guess.
It could be both. I think it's fair to do both. So the fact that they referenced the Gargantua 1 episode from the first season very heavily in this episode made me very happy. Whether 10, 15 years ago when they first did the show, whether they said, oh, at some point this is going to mean this, or whether they were writing this season and they said, oh, you know what we could do is we could tie this to that thing we did back then. I don't know. It works, though. I'm not going to knock them for doing it one way or the other. It's so enjoyable to have that stuff tie together.
Well, either way, it shows how clever they are.
Yeah, very much so. Really good episode. I was talking to my friend at work, and he was like, the moment that episode kicked in, it was relentless. You couldn't. He's like, I had to go back and watch it again because he couldn't keep up with it. And I'm like, yeah, totally. because it was just an information dump the whole episode. And it was an information dump in the way of, wait, that means this? Wait, way back then this means this? And it just, all of it was good. So, that's it for me. What did you do this week?
For the last 3 months, I think it's been 3 months since Supergirl finale. Was it June? Or was it May? I don't remember. But for the last few months, I've been saying I need to watch the final 3 episodes and catch up on that. And this week, I finally just decided to actually do that. So I am now officially all caught up with Supergirl, and yeah, I'm not really sure where to start.
Yeah, forgive me because I watched them about a month and a half ago, so hopefully I'm going to remember most of what you're talking about.
All right. Well, I'm just going to really be talking in like broad strokes here.
Oh yeah, totally.
The final 3 episodes, I thought they were pretty good. I didn't think they were bad. We have talked in the past how the first half of the season was very dour, very not sure, angsty. Angsty is definitely the word. Okay, that's the word I'm looking for. But then after they came back from the break in, I believe it was March, the show really seemed to start finding a better balance and started having more of the lighter moments in the comedy, and the character stuff that we loved from the first season started to slowly come back.
Exactly.
And so the second half of the season was pretty good. I think the final 3 episodes weren't as good as the episodes that were leading up to them, but all in all, I think they managed to pull the season out of the mire by the end. Yeah, I think it had a really shaky start the first half, but I think the second half was a marked improvement. I'm just really hoping that things are going to be better across the entire season with season 4 coming up. I guess now that I've seen it, we can actually address a few of the surprises from the finale.
Sure.
One is the revelation that Wynn is leaving.
Yeah, but the preview for next year seemed like he was still here. So.
Well, that's the thing. I actually don't know if he's supposed to be gone or not, because after I watched the episode, I was reading some stuff on it, and Wynn's farewell in the episode was basically Jeremy Jordan, who plays Wynn, his actual farewell from being a regular on the show. They said that the moment whenever each of the characters is going up to Wynn one after another to say goodbye to him, and Alex goes up to him, and she's like, she looks really wrecked. Apparently that was because Chyler Lee, who plays Alex, was actually devastated that he was leaving the show, and she actually got really emotional. And I can't see that if he's going to be a regular again. My assumption is he might still make the odd guest appearances in the future, but I think that's it for the character as a regular.
Yeah, it's somewhat. I mean, he's gonna be missed. So
the thing though is, it doesn't really surprise me, because after the first season, I don't think they really had much for him to do on the show. We did get the occasional episode where he had a bit more to do, but generally speaking, he had like maybe five minutes of screen time per episode, and just sitting behind the desk and giving information or typing in the computer, and that was it for a large chunk of season 2 and season 3.
Mm-hmm.
So I can understand if this was a decision that Jeremy Jordan made where he wanted to move on, because, quite frankly, didn't really have a lot to do.
Yeah, I mean that's
I don't know. It's such a shame to me, because I remember, when season 1 was going on, and there was the whole thing with the pushing the relationship of Kara pining for James Olsen and Wynn pining for Kara. I always thought that was weird, because Kara and James did not really have any romantic chemistry.
They didn't. No.
And they seemed like they were okay as friends and colleagues, but they didn't have any romantic chemistry. Whereas every scene that Wynn and Kara had, Jeremy Jordan and Melissa Benoist, it was just teeming with chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
And I never understood why they just did not develop that, because other than the idea that it wasn't in their plan, so they weren't going to push it.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I guess that's fair.
It's just, to me, it just really seems like the character was an incredible missed opportunity of things they could have done differently. Because the chemistry was there, and I would have loved if they'd given him more to do over the last 2 years. I guess this also means that that Mon-El is going to be gone for the most part.
Yeah, that was the implication, that everyone was going back to the future.
It's just really funny because the season really ends as if they are going to put them back, Mon-El and Supergirl back together as a couple, and then it's just like 2 seconds later, literally 2 seconds later, that's wiped out. Because it's like they basically almost kind of pledged themselves to each other, and then he leaves the room, or she leaves the room, and Brainiac comes in, and oh no, you got to go back to the future, and that's it. I don't even think we see Mon-El after that. That storyline, the way they played that out in that episode, was just really weird to me. I'm also getting the impression that my understanding is that Rain or Samantha Arias is not going to be a regular in the next season. So I'm wondering if we're gonna ever see those characters again, or if that's it.
Okay, so this is what I need to ask you. You just jogged my memory. We said for a long time that the season had to end with Alex adopting Ruby, right? And then they totally changed that. Okay, that's my question. Did they change it, or were we wrong? I feel like they changed it.
I think they changed it because everything about it was about establishing Alex's relationship with Ruby. That seemed to be that whole storyline for most of the season. And then we get to the very end, and Sam survives, and as far as I know, neither character is going to be on next year, and Alex is looking up adoption websites. I think they changed it. I think they changed their minds about the storyline.
Yeah, I remember sitting there watching it going, I cannot believe it's ending this way. I was certain it was going to end with her adopting Ruby. I was certain if there was one thing about this season that I was certain about, that was it. And it didn't end that way.
I thought that was going to be the major payoff for this entire season.
Yeah. Now, this reminds me of The Flash. They changed the name of the character because everyone figured out the name of the character, and that was supposed to be the payoff? I mean, did they just change it because everyone said, oh, we know what you're doing?
I think that is the case. That is the only thing I can guess at, because everything pointed to that being what was going to happen. It's like Armageddon 2001 back in 1991. Everyone figures, oh, this is going to end with Captain Atom being Monarch, the big villain, and then DC going, oh, geez, everyone figured it out. Mind you, this is long before the internet really became a major thing, and people just figured it out word of mouth or separate individually. Yeah, I think they changed. I don't know. I think in the last minute they changed their minds. I have no idea why, but that's what I'm getting out of it.
Yeah, it really bothers me.
Yeah, I'm actually a little bit disappointed because by the end I was on board with the idea of Alex adopting Ruby. I was okay with it. I thought it was annoying the heck out of me for the first half of the season, but then in the second half they started to write Ruby better.
Right.
Because the first half of the season, we discussed this before, with the problem being that they were writing Ruby, who was supposed to be 12, as if alternating whether as if she was 16 or she was 5.
Mm-hmm. That's as good a way as to put it as any. So.
But then in the second half, they started writing her much more consistently as a preteen. So I started finding the character started bothering me less and less, to the point where I didn't mind the character anymore. So I was totally okay with the inevitability of Alex adopting her. And then suddenly it just doesn't happen. And we're probably never going to see the characters again. I don't know. It's just weird. Yeah, gosh. So much of what happens at the end of the Supergirl finale, season 3 finale, just seemed like, oh no, we no longer have access to these actors. we have to quickly write something to explain why they're not
Yeah, that's as good of an explanation as any.
because so much of it is just left field. I am kind of interested in what they're going to do with the idea of the Russian Supergirl.
Yeah, that was cool.
The thing about it is, everyone keeps talking about Red Sun, but it's not going to be quite the same.
No, it's not really the same at all.
Well, the whole thing with that was that it was specifically a Soviet Superman, and Soviet Empire has been gone for, oh God, what, 27, 28 years now? Yeah, I really have no idea what they're going to do with Season 4. Although we do know a couple of things, and we're going to touch on that in the news. But yeah, just to wrap up with Supergirl, I thought the last 3 episodes were good. I don't think they were as good as the episodes that led up to them. The second half of the season was an improvement over the first half. I think that's because of the showrunner change that happened off
Right.
during the break. If the people that were the showrunners for the second half are continuing for season 4, I'm okay. I'm fine with that. Moving on from that, I guess that means we are getting to what we both did this week, and that is we watched Justice League again last night.
Yeah, we did, and we've done a Justice League episode, so we don't need to talk about it too much. But I'm gonna basically let you say what you said last night because it pretty much says what I feel.
Well, what I said last night was that I still don't get the hate because I love the film. I said it's not a perfect film, but it's one with a lot of great action scenes, character bits, and a lot of funny moments. The thing about the movie is I kept thinking over the last couple of months that, maybe the movie wasn't as good as I thought it was, or because I haven't watched it in a few months, I kind of thought, maybe next time I watch it, I'm going to be a little more level-headed about it, a little more realistic.
Mm-hmm.
And then yesterday I was listening to the soundtrack to the film, and I said to you, this is kind of making me want to watch the movie again. And you said...
Oh, I said me too, because I'd been thinking about watching the movie again for, I don't know, the last week or so.
And so we ended up just putting it on and rewatching it, and I came to the realization, no, I still love it. I just find it a very entertaining film. Yeah, like I said, it's not perfect, but it's really entertaining. I like the character stuff in it. Most of the problems people have with the movie and that I keep getting told, I think are really exaggerated and overstated. I don't know. It's a popcorn movie that I enjoy.
Yeah. Now, obviously, it's the first time I've seen it since I saw Infinity War. I'm not going to sit here and say Infinity War's not a better movie because it is. And I know one of the things people complain about is the CG in Justice League, which we kind of talked about when we talked about Infinity War a couple weeks ago. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Steppenwolf looks better than Thanos. Thanos is one of the best CG characters I've ever seen in a movie.
That is an episode right there. The 5 best CGI characters ever.
Well, it's right. Top of my list is Thanos and Smog from the second Hobbit movie. But I don't think the CG's bad in this film at all. I just think Steppenwolf himself is underdeveloped CG-wise. Like, they didn't fully flesh him out the way they did Thanos. One of the things I love about Thanos is throughout the course of the movie, he gets a 5 o'clock shadow.
Well, okay, the thing about I don't know what it was like for Justice League, but whenever I watched Infinity War last week, and then I rewatched it with the commentary track. On the commentary track, the directors discuss how the CGI for Infinity War was handled by employing every single major special effects company.
Mm-hmm.
And each one was responsible for doing a specific part of the film. Like, one would do some of the space stuff, one would do, this, that, the other. And it was one specific company that had the job of animating Thanos and only Thanos, and they were the only ones that did animation for Thanos. So everyone was focused on their own thing, and they didn't have to worry about everything, so things didn't really get lost. I don't know if that was the case for Justice League, and I'm assuming it wasn't. It's just the problem with Justice League, I think the CGI in the movie on a whole is extremely good. I agree that Steppenwolf is easily the weakest.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Parademons look great. I think Flash's speed looks good. I think Cyborg looks good. I think Superman flying around doing stuff looks good. I think most of the Batman swinging around or doing stuff in the jets or the stuff in the Batmobile, all that looks good. But Steppenwolf himself just looks slightly off, and it's just like it's almost like he is unfinished. And now, mind you, I will completely admit how dumb that sounds when you're talking about the main villain of a major movie, but. I don't think the movie has bad CG. I just think Steppenwolf has bad CG.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think... I don't know. It's kind of like... I would not surprise me if they were actually rushed for the CGI. If they were having to do, last-minute stuff.
Possibly, because of the weird production that they ended up having.
And we have seen that actually happen in major films before. That's something that happened with the Hulk movie back in 2003.
Yeah.
They did not actually finish CGI until days before the premiere. So it would not surprise me if Steppenwolf actually went out unfinished. The only other CGI issue is Henry Cavill's disappearing mustache, which I am adamant is only really noticeable in two scenes, and that is the opening sequence with the cell phone footage of Superman talking to the kids.
Right.
And whenever he's holding Batman up and, the tell me, do you bleed?
Yeah, that's really the only shot that bothers me, is that shot there. And even then, it doesn't really bother me that much.
That one doesn't bother me that much. It's the footage at the very beginning is the one that bothers me. Because it looks like his mouth is, just off. But every other instance, I think it looks good. Yeah, it's really weird, yeah. But no, just to reiterate, I think the movie's fun. Like I said last night, I still really want a Man of Steel 2 Superman sequel starring Henry Cavill. But rewatching the movie again, I would just love if they did a World's Finest film starring Cavill and Ben Affleck as Superman and Batman. I actually want both those to actually happen.
Yeah, I'm down for that.
I guess that means we're finished what we've been doing this week, and it's time to move on to the news of the week. Well, this week we have 4 stories, and right off the bat, the first one is, this actually apparently came out the day I think it was the day we were recording the last week's episode.
I almost read it on the air last week, the way I read that other story on the air, because I saw the tweet come through and I just never fit it into the conversation.
Well, we're talking about it now. Brendan Fraser has been cast as Cliff Steele, Robot Man, in the upcoming DC streaming service TV series Doom Patrol. According to the reports, Fraser will play Cliff in the flashbacks and will voice the character as Robot Man, although another actor will actually play the physical Robot Man.
Which makes sense.
Yeah, that does not surprise me at all. I never would have thought of Brendan Fraser as Robot Man, but no, this could be fun.
It's a good pick if you think about it.
Yeah, I like it. I can see him as playing the cocky race car driver, but then also the guy who was this idol and hero who is now morose and depressed, and basically it's kind of what has happened to Brendan Fraser in his personal life over the last 15 years.
Sadly, yes.
Yeah. But yeah, no, who knows? He's been kind of making a bit of a comeback the last couple of years, doing a lot more high-profile TV show stuff. So, yeah, I like this casting. It's kind of funny. I'm starting to look more forward to the Doom Patrol TV show than I am the Titans TV show.
Well, yeah, because the Titans TV show looks terrible.
It really does. Oh, God. Speaking of DC television casting, we have a bunch of stuff from Supergirl. It came out this week that Tyler Hoechlin will return as Superman during the December Batwoman crossover event, and they're also saying he will definitely co-star in all 3 episodes of the Arrowverse crossover. The event will also introduce Lois Lane, although the role has yet to be cast. It also came out this past week that Bruce Boxleitner is replacing Brent Spiner as the vice president in season 4 of Supergirl. Spiner had previously been announced as playing the vice president. It's supposed to be a reoccurring role, but apparently Spiner had to step down due to scheduling difficulties. Boxleitner, that's kind of cool. The other thing, apparently this actually came out at the end of July, but I never caught this, so I added it. Apparently last month it was announced that Rona Mitra will be playing a season-long villain, Mercy Graves, with actor Robert Baker as Mercy's brother, Otis. It's always interesting to me whenever they find ways to kind of make Otis fit in with other characters. Yeah, a lot to cover here. Tyler Hoechlin's Superman, I'm really looking forward to seeing him come back.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I can't believe it's been, gosh,
2 years.
Yeah, almost 2 years since, we haven't seen him since the end of season 2. I hope he's going to make more appearances and not just this crossover. The funny thing is I'm starting to see speculation as to whether or not this means the Arrowverse is actually going to introduce their version of the Justice League. Because with this crossover, we're going to have Green Arrow, The Flash, Supergirl, Superman, and now Batwoman. Which is, a little bit exciting. Yeah,
that's, I'm all for that. It's all going to come down to them not being able to do Batman, isn't it?
Yeah, it's weird. The Batman rights issues are always weird. The Bruce Boxleitner playing the vice president. I'm assuming the vice president under Linda Carter's president.
Although we didn't see her all year either.
I thought we did see her at the very beginning of this season, but maybe you're right. Maybe we haven't seen her since season 2. I guess this means we're not going to be seeing her anytime soon. But yeah, Rona Mitra as Mercy Graves. Mercy Graves is a character that was created for the Superman the Animated Series, and I really like the character, and I've always wanted them to more regularly include her in the comics, the same way that Harley Quinn went from being a Batman the Animated Series character to being a major part of DC Comics. But we've never consistently seen her in the comic books. Right. Them bringing her into the TV show and having Rona Mitra play her, I'm kind of excited about that. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, they had her in BVS, and they've used her here and there, but she's never really stayed in the comics.
The thing, though, is the BVS version was very, very different.
No, yeah, absolutely, but she was there.
She was, and we're getting Otis. I'm assuming we're not going to get the same type of Otis.
We'll probably get some kind of weird play on that, but
I would love it if it was the chubby doofus with the straw hat and the a seersucker suit.
Yeah.
But we're probably just gonna get I'm assuming some kind of violent psychopathic guy in a leather jacket or something with a goatee. That's what I'm imagining.
You might be right.
The third news item of the week is Danny Boyle's departure as the director of James Bond 25 has reportedly reset the production and puts its November 2019 release date in doubt. It suggested the production will abandon the script co-written by Boyle and his longtime writing partner John Hodge, and a new script will be commissioned. The film was originally scheduled to begin filming on December 8th. Of this year, and apparently that is not happening
So, like, I didn't really have an opinion one way or the other about Boyle doing this film because I'm slightly familiar with him. I know who he is, but like, I don't really have a deep interest in. I would have rather they just brought Mendes back to do another one. But yeah, I kind of want to know what happened. I kind of want to know why he's not there now.
All I'm hearing is the standard issue creative differences.
Right, that's all I've heard as well.
The thing is Boyle has never done a franchise film before. He's always basically done whatever he wanted to do, and he's doing something this high profile was shocking, and it doesn't really surprise me that he's left the production. I have no idea who they're going to get. Apparently, it really sounds like they have no idea.
Yeah, I was going to say they have no idea who they're going to get.
Because I am seeing all kinds of random names being dropped.
I saw Edgar Wright's names apparently on the short list, which is...
I did see that.
Which is really interesting.
Oh, God. If it's going to be Edgar Wright, don't expect this movie to come out for another couple of years.
Right.
Just because he's going to be doing a new script, and it's going to be a mad... This movie's probably... It would not surprise me if this movie gets delayed 2 years. Some of the names that they are dropping as potentials just are going to delay it so much further. They need to get someone that they can rely on who can do a quick turnaround and get the movie out fast, which is traditionally what they usually do with Bond movies.
Right.
I think their best bet would be to try to convince Sam Mendes to come back.
He seemed like he had a plan for the character over those couple of films, so why can't he do more?
Yeah, it just seems like the safest choice at this point. Either that or you just get someone who's essentially a trusted journeyman.
Right.
The final news item that we have is Disney has stopped the pre-production of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and put the film on indefinite hold.
Who saw this coming? I did. Hey, the Nazis won. Go us. Go Disney! The Nazis won.
They basically did.
Yeah, there ain't no basically about it, brother.
Do you remember how... of course you remember. What was it, 5 years ago, 6 years ago when Disney bought out Marvel?
Yeah.
Everyone was panicking, freaking out, saying Disney is going to take over Marvel Studios and is going to be running it and telling them what to do. And then that didn't happen.
Oh, because remember, Disney said Marvel knows what they're doing, and we just want to be part of the. Basically, we want to reap the rewards. We want to be part of the process and reap the rewards, and we're gonna let them keep doing what they're doing because they know what they're doing. But as soon as it gets political, they step in.
And now Disney is throwing their weight around. Yeah, it really seems like they're the ones in charge of this now. It's getting to the point where I would not be surprised if Kevin Feige is out at some point soon. And if he is,
now
someone get him at Warner Brothers for DC.
Now, here's the thing. I have something to say about this. Is the MCU not completely predicated? Yes, I said predicated. That's a big word. I might have used it wrong. Is it not completely predicated on the idea that we don't care what someone did 10 years ago? I mean, the whole friggin' franchise is built on Robert Downey Jr.'s back.
Mm-hmm.
He was an actor that no one would touch 10 years ago, or, slightly before 10 years ago. And they give him a chance, and we have the MCU as we know it today, whereas no one else wanted to cast him in anything.
Right. In 2006, when he started finally getting more high-profile roles again, he was still considered basically toxic, because there were so many years where he was completely uninsurable.
Right.
Insurance companies just would not cover a production that had his name. And then you give him all the credit in the world because he turned his life and he turned his career around, and he's a superstar today.
It's almost like people are not the same person they were 10 years ago.
Yeah, this whole idea is just, Disney really screwed up. But the whole thing with Kevin Feige, we know that Feige had been fighting to get Gunn rehired, and then they have the Disney chairman, whose name escapes me at the moment, has the private meeting with Gunn 2 weeks ago where he tells him, no, we're not hiring you again. It's just a courtesy meeting. How is that a courtesy meeting? That meeting takes place conveniently when Kevin Feige is out of town. It really seems like Disney was basically undermining Kevin Feige and Marvel Studios.
I just really, really hope Gunn gets a really nice severance, because they're the ones breaching the contract, not him.
Yeah, because the whole thing is, if he had, his contract, my understanding is his contract, and everyone who works in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has a contract where they can be fired if they violate a morals clause. But his tweets came years before he ever signed a contract with them and are not covered by that morals clause. So them terminating his contract means they actually have to negotiate an exit to get rid of him. So if they're not rehiring him, this means that for the next, I don't know how long it's going to take, whether it's going to be days, weeks, or months, Disney lawyers are going to be dealing with Gunn lawyers, and they are going to be trying to figure out how to pay him off to go away.
Right.
And he can't take any offers to work for other studios, until this is finished.
And, there was all this talk about Batista saying, well, I'll honor my contract. Well, are they in breach of contract with him with all the actors if they don't end up making the next movie? I don't know how that works. I'm seriously asking. But it'd be interesting if that was the situation that ended up growing out of this. It was them not making Guardians 3 and the actors going, wait, we were guaranteed this movie. And, the only reason we're not getting the movie is because you fired a guy for no reason, because he didn't violate his contract. So you're kind of violating our contracts. Again,
the thing is,
I'm taking guesses here. I don't understand how contracts work. I'm not a lawyer.
I don't think that would actually fit with the situation unless the actors had pay or play contracts.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I get that.
If the movie doesn't get made, they still have to get paid.
Right. Okay. I mean, but we don't know that they don't.
We don't. But that's usually something that someone who has much more demand.
Oh yeah.
Could have.
I mean, we didn't really talk about it, but the whole thing with Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth possibly. I say possibly, but even though it's reported that they're supposed to be out of the next Star Trek movie, it basically came down to, oh, well, you're going to pay us this to do this movie? I'm getting this much from DC right now. Well, I'm getting this much from Marvel right now. And we're just going to keep going making movies with them.
Well, the issue was that I believe it was Paramount gave them offers for so much money to do the fourth film. And my understanding is that Paramount is actually close to bankruptcy. And they are really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way they can get the fourth film made is if they get financing from outside. And the only way they're going to get the financing is if they can present the financiers with, well, this movie's going to star Chris Pine and Chris Hemsworth, Steve Trevor, and Thor. And quite frankly, Thor is big box office right now.
Well, I mean, I'm sort of surprised Pine is as big as he is now, just off of Wonder Woman, because he's been around for a while, and he's been like at this mid-level of, oh, he's a guy we all know, but he doesn't make anything huge. Best thing he did was Star Trek, and those kind of divide people. But then after Wonder Woman, it's like he's in demand.
Right, exactly. So Paramount signed the two of them to a contract with, or had this huge money offer for both of them to come back to do the fourth film, and they agreed. And that way, Paramount went to the investors saying, we got them locked in, we're going to do this movie, how would you like to invest in it so we can actually make it? We're going to make buttloads of money. But then it came into the realization that in order to make this movie and make this movie successfully, they had to make it cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And they needed to get the rest of the cast. And signing the rest of the cast wasn't going to be a problem because they could kind of get them more for scale. But then they went, oh, geez, it's going to cost us too much money right off the bat with how much money we promised Pine and Hemsworth. So Paramount went to them and said, listen, we're going to make the movie, but we can't pay you as much as we said we were going to pay you. You guys mind taking a pay cut? And the two of them basically said, no.
Yeah, that's cutting into my Thor time.
they could easily go and do other stuff for more money than what Paramount wants to now give them.
Right.
So they're basically out, and now Paramount does not have a marquee name to sell Star Trek 4 on.
Zachary Quinto will just go find something else that Leonard Nimoy did and do that, since he's just redoing all of Leonard Nimoy's stuff at this point.
Oh my goodness!
I love Zach too, and I know Nimoy loved Zach, but it's just funny that he's Spock, and now he's doing In Search Of. Is he just Nimoy? Is he just Nimoy at this point?
I totally want him to do a cover of the Ballad of Bilbo Baggins.
Hasn't he done that already?
I don't know if he should if he hasn't.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh no, you know what? I'm thinking of the commercial that him and Nimoy were in for. They did a commercial where they were both driving these new cars or whatever, and at one point they cut to Nimoy driving the car and he's singing Ballad of Bilbo Baggins. So
yeah, I remember that.
It all blurs together in my head. So,
oh gosh.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a little bit about Star Trek. I like those movies. You kind of don't. But they've made money. Even the last one has made money. So.
Well, the thing is, they made money, but they were not profitable. The first one from 2000.
I think only the third one they said was not profitable.
Right. Star Trek Into Darkness only became profitable, my understanding, when it hit home video, because it took them a long time to break even on that. And with all three movies, they were more expensive than the last. And the thing with Star Trek is the Star Trek movies in the 80s and 90s were all profitable because they were actually cheaply made.
Oh yeah.
They don't look cheap, but they were cheaply made compared to other big blockbusters, science fiction adventures. And Paramount was just throwing like 150, 180, 200 million at each of these movies, and then throwing in all of the costs for the marketing and everything like that. And with the last one, they lost money.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the reasons why they are reportedly facing bankruptcy, is because they've been throwing so much money over the last few years at franchises and films that just have not been profitable. The only real thing that's really kind of saving them at this point, I believe, is the Mission Impossible movies, and even the Transformers movies, which were doing great for them. The last few have not been doing that well.
Right. So everything's on Bumblebee's shoulders.
Oh, basically, no lie, it definitely is.
If I can say this, this is an odd position here because Bumblebee is my favorite Transformer, and the movie doesn't look bad to me. And I haven't seen the last two Transformers movies. Like I was watching all those movies, and even though I was understanding that they were kind of cheap crap movies, I was still enjoying them for what they were. But I hadn't seen the last two. This one actually looks good. Bumblebee's my favorite Transformers character, but it does look good. But it has all the problems of things that I normally don't like about prequels. It's like, wait, well, how was he here before? And they didn't know. Like, there was no reference to that in the first movie, that Starscream was here and that Bumblebee was here, and then there's this skirmish with the U.S. military that we're seeing in the trailer. I hate when they shoehorn stuff in and go, oh no, it happened, we just didn't mention it. Yeah.
I would actually prefer if they just called it a reboot.
Yeah, but it's specifically being done as a prequel.
Yeah, I think that's a mistake. It should definitely just be called a reboot and just leave it at that. I think for your sake and your enjoyment of the movie, you should just take it as a reboot.
I mean, that's probably what I'm going to do. But then there's already, like, okay, so like I said, I think it looks good, but the newest trailer I saw has a joke that's like, we're referencing something from the other movies, and it's like, oh god, just stop doing that, because there's the whole thing that Bumblebee does in the other movies where he talks through the radio or whatever. Apparently he doesn't have his voice in this, and she's showing him, look, you could talk with music, and she puts a tape in his tape deck, and he basically, and so it's like, it's the origin of that thing, which we've talked about, we hate that, but it's not only it's the origin of that thing, but then he's like, no, I don't like that. So it's not the origin of that thing, or it's different than you think it should be. And it's like, oh, just why did they even have to address that? He could have just had his voice, and they could have said, oh, before the first movie he lost his voice.
Right. Well, we already know that because in the very first Transformers film, Optimus actually addresses.
Yeah, Optimus and Ratchet actually address that. So
Yeah, that he just lost his voice right there. It's like, oh god, yeah, oh, stupid. I hate when they do stuff like that. Oh, it's a reference for the fans. No, it's an insult to the fans. Okay.
well, let's move on.
Yeah, let's move on. But before we move on to the main topic, we're gonna take a moment. Matt, do you have anything you want to say about Galactic Gregs?
Yeah, we're great. Oh,
No false modesty here.
we are starting to do our change the floor that we've been talking about for a while, so that's going to be happening. So as I said before, excuse us as we get that done. Also, thanks for everyone who came in and was super patient as we were trying to figure out our new point of sale and cash register system, because we all feel like stupid rookies trying to figure out a different system. Everyone's been real patient with that, so thank you for that. Once again, I want to say that I'm finding out more and more of you actually listen to the show that are Galactic Greg's customers, and I very much appreciate that, but I want to reiterate, we want feedback. Send us an email, send us some tweets, let us know what you think of the show. We've been looking at numbers lately as far as how the show is doing, and it seems like a lot of you are not listening to the show the week it comes out. You're listening to the show, which is great, but you're not listening to it the week it comes out. And that makes me ask, if you're not listening the week it comes out, then is it necessary for us to keep doing the news? Because it's kind of timely, and if you're listening 3 weeks, 4 weeks later, it doesn't matter. So yeah, I mean, let us know what you like about the show and what you don't like. Give us a review on iTunes, or send us some email and let us know how we're doing. I appreciate everyone listening. I just would like to hear from you. Other than that, Galactic Gregs goes on as usual.
Well, that's super. I have no idea what I was going to say. And with that, we are moving on to the main topic. And this week's episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics is about the adventures of Buckaroo Banzai across the 8th dimension from 1984. This was not planned, but I kind of like the idea that how it worked out, that this episode, this topic, kind of encapsulates elements of what we were discussing the last 2 weeks with our last two main topics. What I mean is, 2 weeks ago we discussed Big Trouble in Little China, which was a B-movie, real comic book type film, and we discussed Buckaroo Banzai briefly during that episode, and because there are certain similarities between the two films.
Right.
And then last week we discussed Hellboy, Wake the Devil, and we discussed how we loved the concept of Hellboy because it was basically a distillation of everything that Mike Mignola was interested in or liked and loved growing up, and there was a lot of like dovetailing with stuff that I was interested in and loved when I was growing up. And Buckaroo Banzai is basically it's all that. So I was like very interested in actually revisiting the movie and discussing it today.
Yeah, and I enjoyed this more than I thought I was going to, so let's get into it. Are you going to throw out a plot there, Monkey Boy, or are we just talking?
Oh, gosh. Well, I was thinking about quickly reading the plot on Wikipedia. Do you mind if I do that?
Let's do that.
All right. Buckaroo Banzai and his mentor, Dr. Hikita, perfect the oscillation overthruster, a device that allows one to pass through solid matter. Banzai tests it by driving his jet car through a mountain. While passing through it, Banzai finds himself in another dimension, and on returning to his normal dimension, he discovers an alien organism has attached itself to his car. News of Banzai's success reaches Dr. Emilio Lizardo, currently held at the Trenton Home for the Criminally Insane. In 1938, Lizardo and Hikita had built a prototype overthruster, but Lizardo tested it before it was ready and became stuck between dimensions. Though freed, it caused him to go insane. Where the Banzai has succeeded, Lizardo breaks out. Banzai and the Hong Kong Cavaliers are performing at a nightclub when Banzai interrupts their musical intro to address a depressed and suicidal woman, Penny Pretty, in the audience. During a performance he gives, especially for her, she attempts suicide, which is mistaken for an assassination attempt upon Banzai. After bailing her out of jail, he finds she is the long-lost twin sister of his late wife. Later, Banzai holds a press conference about his rocket car experience, the Overthruster, and a specimen of alien transdimensional life he obtained while traveling through the 8th dimension. Strange men disrupt the event and kidnap Hikita and the Overthruster. Due to an electrical shock from an unknown source, Banzai sees these men as reptilian humanoids. The others give chase, and Penny happens to encounter Hikita, who passes her the Overthruster before he is recaptured. While planning what to do next, Banzai and the Cavaliers are met by John Parker, a messenger from John Emdahl, the leader of the alien black lectroids of Planet 10, currently in Earth's orbit. Emdahl explains that they have been at war with the hostile red lectroids for years, but had managed to banish them to the 8th dimension. Lizardo's failed test of the Overthruster in 1938 allowed the red lectroids leader, John Worfen, to take over Lizardo's mind and enable several dozen others to escape. Now that Banzai has perfected the Overthruster, Emdahl fears Worfen and his allies will try to acquire it to free the other red lectroids. Emdahl had shocked Banzai previously to allow him to see the lectroids for who they are, and now tasks him with stopping Worfen, or otherwise the black lectroids will fake a nuclear explosion to start World War III that will annihilate the Earth and the red lectroids with it. The Cavaliers track down the red lectroids to Yoyodin propulsion systems in New Jersey, finding that their arrival in 1938 was told by Orson Welles' broadcast of the War of the Worlds, until the lectroids forced him to state it was a work of fiction. Yoyodin has been building a spacecraft to cross over to the 8th dimension under the pretense of a new United States Air Force bomber. The red invade Banzai's headquarters and kidnap Penny, unaware she has passed the Overthruster off to one of Banzai's allies. Banzai and the Cavaliers set off to gather allies and confront Worfen at Yoyodin, as well as warning the President of the United States as to avoid a nuclear war. At Yoyodin, Penny refuses to tell the lectroids where the Overthruster is, and they start to torture her. Banzai arrives and chases off the lectroids, though Penny is wounded and unconscious. While the Cavaliers tend to her, Banzai and Parker sneak into a pod on the spacecraft. Without Banzai's Overthruster, Worfen insists they use his imperfect model, which fails to make the dimensional transition and instead breaks through the Yoyodin wall, flying off into the atmosphere. Banzai and Parker escape the pod from the main craft and use its weapon systems to destroy Worfen and all the other red lectroids. Banzai parachutes back to Earth while Parker returns to his people. With the situation resolved and war averted, Banzai finds Penny remains comatose. When he goes to kiss her, Emdahl causes another brief shock to Banzai that revives Penny. The end credits announce an unproduced sequel, Buckaroo Banzai against the World Crime League. And there we go.
Oscillation, Overthruster, and Yoyodine propulsion systems were the words you were looking for.
Thank you.
Here to help.
I got tongue-tied.
Yoyodine is actually a fictional company that has been referenced in many media. It's referenced in Star Trek sometimes. I think there's a couple of video games that reference it. So it's kind of like a stock fictional company for propulsion systems.
I didn't realize that. They're not the ones that supposedly in Star Trek 4, The Voyage Home, created the ultra-thin glass.
The transparent aluminum?
Yeah.
No. But it's what I was looking at was numerous references in the Star Trek series, such as control panels and dedication plaques, indicate that parts of Federation starships were manufactured by Yoyodine Propulsion Systems, or YPS. Often these notices are too small to be visible on a television screen and can only be observed by freeze framing. The creators of Star Trek talk about tongue-tied. The creators of Star Trek The Next Generation were noted fans of Buckaroo Banzai and featured many references to the film in the series.
Oh, okay, so it didn't originate with the original Star Trek series. It was something that was introduced in Next Gen in tribute to this movie.
Right.
Okay. Generally, whenever we discuss a movie on this podcast, we break things up into categories of, we talk about the themes, we talk about the characters, specific characters, we do all that. This time, we're going to play it a little more loosey-goosey because, quite frankly, I haven't been able to figure out a way to break this down. For some reason, this one's a little tougher for me. You know what? Okay. Usually whenever I'm hosting an episode about a movie, I ask the question, how did we first learn about this movie? So I'm going to ask it this time. Matt, how did you first learn about this movie?
I think I honestly remember the trailers, although reading the article about the movie, it didn't seem like they had trailers. It seemed like they were very limited advertisement for this film when it first came out. So my guess is I saw commercials for it on some television broadcast or whatever, like when it was going to be on TV, not actually in the theater. It seems like that my background information that I read basically seems like they didn't do any conventional advertisement for the film when it was in theaters, and they only promoted it at a few Star Trek conventions.
Yeah, my understanding is that the studio did not know what to do with the movie, so they all but dropped it. They gave it a release, but they didn't bother actually pushing it or promoting it because they didn't know how.
Mm-hmm.
Which I can kind of understand. Well, maybe not understand, but I get that because we have seen that happen to countless movies. For example, just off the top of my head, The Princess Bride, when that came out in, 1987, it was actually promoted as being a heartwarming family film about a grandfather reading to his son.
Right.
No comedy, no fantasy, just a grandfather reading to his son.
So further to that, I probably by high school I started hearing about this movie, and it seemed like something that I should see, and continuously I just never got around to seeing it until about 3 to 4 years ago, maybe was the first time I saw it. But at that point, like I said on last week's show, I had listened to a movie podcast that talked about it in depth, and I'd read a little bit about it, and like it quite frankly wasn't readily available on home video for a long time, So finally, like 3-4 years ago, I just downloaded it and watched it, and then it came out on Blu-ray for some sort of anniversary release, and I picked it up then. It is one that I was very happy to get checked off my sort of bucket list of movies that I wanted to see, But yeah, I guess. I used to listen to Kevin Smith's Batman podcast a lot, and he had on. I love when my brain shuts down on the show. He had on Peter Weller when Peter Weller was in the animated Dark Knight Returns, and there was a pretty lengthy discussion about Buckaroo Banzai on that episode as well, because Smith is a big fan. And I guess they had a anniversary screening at one of the media centers out in LA, and Smith got to do the intro for it, and Peter Weller was telling him that he was sitting there with John Lithgow, and he leaned over to Lithgow and said, "Why is this guy doing the intro to our movie? He probably doesn't know anything about our movie." And then he said that both him and Lithgow thought that, like, yeah, I've seen where Lithgow has described it as it's a movie you can't describe or whatever. And they said that the two of them thought Smith did a better job of describing what the movie actually was than they had ever heard. So I knew all these little bits and pieces before actually seeing it for the first time 3 or 4 years ago. How about you?
Before I get into my experience with the movie, I am just going to quickly say that it doesn't surprise me that Kevin Smith is a huge fan of the film, because he was connected for a little while with doing a television series adaptation of this. Although I haven't heard anything about that in like a year.
I checked into that. Apparently, there's a lawsuit going on over the rights, and at that point, Kevin Smith stepped out.
Oh, that's a shame.
He said he would love to still be connected to it, but he's going to let all that get worked out because he doesn't think it's going to be made at this point.
Yeah. Anytime lawyers get involved. Wow. Yeah. I did figure something happened because, as I said, it's been a year since I've heard anything. But me, I honestly do not remember when this was actually in theaters.
I don't think anyone remembers when it was in theaters.
Yeah, because I don't remember any trailers or anything like that. I do remember seeing bits and pieces of it on HBO at my grandparents'. That would have been tail end of '84, I think.
Yeah. Oh, I remember seeing it mentioned in some documentary about sci-fi movies that I was watching, like on PBS or whatever. So for the longest time, the only image of the movie that I had was him on the parachute at the end, because that was the clip that they used. So whenever anyone would say Buckaroo Banzai, I'd just think of him on that parachute rig.
Well, the thing I'm trying to get at is I saw bits and pieces of it as a kid on HBO, circa 84, 85. And anytime it was on HBO, I would watch it for a while. But I don't think I ever actually saw the movie from start to finish. And then until I think I was around 12 or 13, I caught it on late night TV and watched it once while, doing other stuff. And then I never saw it again. And I liked the movie enough back then. I didn't really have a strong opinion of it. It didn't really make much of an impression. But I was always aware that it had this huge reputation and this massive cult following. And then I finally, after I got online, which the very first time I ever got online was in 2000, and I would see Buckaroo Banzai mentioned every now and then, kind of frequently, because again, it was this cult thing that was going around. And I think it was about 10 years ago I finally actually got around to getting it on DVD, and I watched it then. I think I've watched it a second time since then, and then I did not see it again until I watched it with you the other day, and then I watched it this afternoon just an hour before we started recording.
Yeah, when we watched it the other night, that was only my third time seeing it.
Yeah, I think I've seen it, complete probably 5 times in my life. I don't know, I might have seen the entire thing when I was a kid. I simply do not remember, or I can't specifically say. Yeah, that's basically it for me.
Oh, so you mentioned you don't remember when it was in the theater.
Yeah.
It opened on June 8th of 84. Or no, I'm sorry. It was scheduled to open on June 8th of 84, but it ended up actually opening on August 15th. It only opened on 236 screens, and it was in the theater the same time as Star Trek III: The Search for Spock, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Ghostbusters.
Oh, God.
Which makes me sad, because that means the Gremlins was out of the theater by that point, because it opened the same day as Ghostbusters. We've discussed that. So yes, if you don't remember it being in the theater, it's because it was on less than 300 screens across, and I'm assuming that means in North America, either in North America or in the United States. It was on less than 300 screens here, and it was out at the same time as a bunch of huge franchise films.
Seriously, when I was a kid, the big thing was Ghostbusters and especially Gremlins. Right. Those were the two biggies back then. So yeah, I can completely see it understand it being completely overshadowed. Okay, you know what? We're kind of jumping around the central issue, and I'm sure we're going to get further into it whenever we get to the ratings. But I think we should probably just kind of touch on it right now, and that is what we actually think of the movie.
Okay. So I briefly mentioned this last week that I had been listening to a movie podcast that went over this movie, and like I said, I always felt it was a movie that I needed to see and that I had to get around to seeing, and when I heard that movie podcast, I went, oh my god, it sounds way better than I ever could have imagined. Like, it's everything I want out of that kind of weird, crazy movie. And then I went and watched it. That was the first time I watched it, was within a week of listening to that podcast. And the best thing I can say is that the guy on the podcast liked it so much that his description of it was better than the actual thing. Now, he didn't say anything that wasn't actually in the movie or actually, different than it was just his emotion and his spin on everything in the movie made it sound like a better movie than what it was, because his emotion and his spin didn't account for the fact that some of the camera work is terrible, some of the lighting is terrible, a lot of the movie seems cheaply made, and a lot of it's badly paced. It just actually described the story bits and what he liked about it. And I like a lot of the same things that he liked. It's a lot of the same story bits that I'm into. I love the idea of this movie. I think that it's a great concept. I love Banzai as a character. I think as a character idea, it's great. All the stuff with him having like a hard rock band who's a group of scientists, and there's so much that's so good. And we were talking about with Venture Brothers. This movie does that thing where he's had other adventures. They reference them, but they don't explain any of it. It feels like it's existing in a larger world that we never got to see, and I like that aspect of it. But there's too many questionable performances, questionable lighting, questionable camera work, where cheapness of it, a lot of times cheapness on these kind of movies can make it feel cheesy, and in that regard give it a charm. But I think it works against this movie. I think it makes this movie less than what it should be.
I basically agree with most of what you said. This is a movie where there are so many aspects of it that I absolutely love. There are characters I think are great. There are performances I think are wonderful. It's brimming with ideas. This movie
Absolutely.
has more ideas than most movies have. And it's just, there's so much going for it, but the finished product is actually less than the sum of its parts. It just, in the end, for some reason, it just, as a finished film, it just does not work for me.
Right. Oh, you know what I want to quickly say?
Okay.
When we watched it the other day, you and I, that was the most I've ever liked it. The third time I saw it, when I watched it with you, I enjoyed it the most out of all three times I watched it. So it might, I'm open to the idea that it might get better every time I watch it. But I didn't feel too much greater about it the second time versus the first time. So I don't know if it was just the company and us riffing on it or whatever that made it more enjoyable. But I definitely enjoyed it more the third time.
Yeah, I can see it being a film that gets better with multiple viewings. But the thing is, I've seen it like 6 times in my life.
No, yeah, I get that.
And the issue for me is, okay, when I was reading the plot just now for the movie, I'm thinking, so that's what was actually happening. I have seen this movie 6 times, and every single time I watch the movie, I cannot follow the plot. In any given scene, I have no idea what's actually going on.
Now, that's similar to what we were talking about with the Hellboy book last week. I don't have that problem. Then again, my first time watching it was after I listened to a detailed description of it on a podcast. So maybe I went in knowing everything. I don't know. Stuff taints your first experience sometimes.
Oh, definitely.
So I really can't give you a fair answer on that.
Yeah, it's just, I find this movie frustrating because I don't know how, but it manages to simultaneously be fun and entertaining, but it's also so dull and meandering for a large percentage of the movie. You get these brief moments of brilliance, but then it's just, I don't know if it's the editing or what. Here's the funny thing. I put the DVD on, and I don't have the Blu-ray. But I put the DVD on, and I get 2 choices. One is the theatrical version, and one is the extended version. And I have never watched the extended version. And the reason I've never watched the extended version is, and I'm open to the possibility that the extended version might actually be better and might actually fix a lot of like the pacing issues and actually improve the film. But I keep worrying that it's going to be more boring. It's just going to be the finished film, but longer.
I haven't actually seen the extended version myself. My understanding is it just contains a additional scene at the beginning where we see Banzai as a child with his family before the events of the film. Because most famously, if I'm not mistaken about this, that I think it's Jamie Lee Curtis plays his mother.
Oh, yes, that's true. Yeah, she was edited, or she was cut out of the finished theatrical version.
Right.
Yeah, oh gosh. Oh. You know, it's kind of funny because I have so much notes for this movie, actually, from whenever we watched it the other day and rewatching it myself. Just quickly glancing at it. I don't know.
Well, one of the things I wanted to point out was, as we were saying, how it feels like there's this world, this movie's set in this world where we know, you can tell other things have happened. He's had other adventures. It's almost like it's the third film in a series or something like that.
Well, I love that because it's kind of like the original Star Wars trilogy in the idea that it's a lived world.
Right.
And I love that. I really like the idea that it's not an origin film. We're just dropped in this adventure of this established hero. And quite frankly, I wish superhero films today would actually just do that. I'm so tired of origin films.
So my understanding is that Mac Rauch, however you pronounce it, who is the writer of this film, I guess they tasked him with coming up with a screenplay basically a pitch, or spec script or whatever to say, oh yeah, this is a movie we can make, And one of the things he did was he would start writing Buckaroo Banzai, like short stories or adventure stories, and he'd get 20 to 30 pages in and scrap it and start a new one, and get 20 to 30 pages in and scrap it and start a new one. And he apparently did this repeatedly to the point where apparently there is like a desk full of unused material. So all of that ended up like filtering into the final script because he actually kind of had written these other adventures that Banzai had. So he had that information to pull from. He claims to have started at least a dozen scripts before the finished script was done.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
But there's something like when they're in the lab, when they're after the black electroids in the lab, and Jeff Goldblum's like, why is there a watermelon there? Oh, I'll tell you later. It's like, wait, something happened there. I want to know what it was. It's obviously a reference to one of his other adventures or something, There's so many things like that in the movie,
That doesn't bother me. Stuff like that, I like.
No, I love stuff like that. I'm not saying it bothers me at all. I also like that this movie doesn't waste it for a movie that feels like it's plotting half the time. It doesn't waste anything because you get things like, okay, you can have your scientific conference here, but you got to clean out by this time because we're having a motorcycle convention. And it seems like a throwaway line until you get the awesome motorcycle chase because Banzai has to commandeer a motorcycle to go after the bad guys. And it's like, oh, wait, another movie would have just randomly had a motorcycle there. Right. They set it up ahead of time that, hey, you know what? There's going to be a bunch of motorcycles, And then he steals the motorcycle and the guy's like, hey, you can't steal that motorcycle. It's Buckaroo Banzai because he's famous. So the guy's like cool with it,
The other thing is this movie, the way that this movie opens, I think is brilliant. Despite any of the flaws in this movie, there are, as I said earlier, there are moments of brilliance in this.
Oh, yeah.
And I love the opening because we are getting this juxtaposition of the scientists in that setting up for the experiment with the rocket car. And this is out in like, I forget where, the salt flats, I think.
Yeah.
And it's being just juxtaposed with Buckaroo Banzai performing brain surgery. And he's in the middle of brain surgery, and he's talking to Jeff Goldblum's character, and he's doing this stuff while Clancy Brown is outside in the little ante-room connected to the surgical room, dictating everything that's happening.
Right.
And then Buckaroo Banzai just goes from performing brain surgery to testing the experimental rocket car, and I love everything about this character. This character is just, it's the kind of character that I wish I could create.
Oh yeah.
This idea of this guy who is a brain surgeon, rocket scientist, particle physicist, rock star, martial arts master, daredevil, adventurer, and crime fighter. And it's such a brilliant concept. I have always described this as Doc Savage meets Doctor Who.
That's fair.
I might have even pointed that out last week, but it's Doc Savage meets Doctor Who, but for a MTV New Wave style of comic book. And it's like all these aspects of different things. It's pulling from these pulps from the 30s with Doc Savage. It's pulling from Doctor Who. It's pulling from MTV and the new wave stuff, and the bands coming up around this time. It's pulling from comic books. It's pulling from like 70s like Hong Kong and Japanese cinema. It's just got so many different influences. It's really all over the place, and the concept for me just works. I mean, this whole idea of this character, quite frankly, he's an absurd character.
Oh,
but
absolutely.
It works for me. And he's going around with this group of scientists who are his compatriots. They are his fellow inventors and researchers, and they're also his rock band.
Right.
And every single one of them is carrying a sidearm.
Yeah.
I mean, this is an insane film.
Quite frankly, this is with a different overall feel to it. But this is similar to something that we'll get later from like Quentin Tarantino this is an absurd world where these people are these kind of people and they walk around with guns and samurai swords, and there's a place on the plane for you to put your samurai sword. It's that kind of weird, like, it's a fully developed, just by seeing how these characters are, you not only get that he's a weird character and they're all weird characters, but that the world itself is weird.
Oh yeah.
Because it allows a character like this to exist.
This is a world where you could have Buckaroo Banzai walking down the street with Perfect Tommy wearing a jacket and no shirt, and Jeff Goldblum's character in all complete country western Roy Rogers type cowboy outfit with the ridiculous 10-gallon or was it 12-gallon hat?
Yeah, it's a big cowboy hat. So
and the insane lamb fur chaps, and everyone just accepts it.
Yeah. No, I mean, literally, Buckaroo asks him to join the group, and he basically has to come up with a character for himself.
I never got that. I never actually got that.
I mean, I don't know if they never actually say that, but that's what I get out of it.
I also like that we actually have one of the other members of the Hong Kong Cavaliers walks around with the ninja slippers.
Yeah.
It's just insane. This movie is insane.
Well, the other thing about Banzai as a character is he's also that level of good guy for good guy's sake, does good for good's sake because it's the right thing to do, and just generally caring person. I mean, he's performing a rock concert, and he's in tune enough to realize that someone is not happy in the room, and he stops the rock concert to try and see if he can make the person happy. And then when the fans get rowdy because they're there to see a rock show, and he's like, "Don't do that. Don't be mean."
Yeah. Yeah.
He talks down to his fans saying, "This isn't the way we treat people. We treat people good." He's like Mr. Rogers at that point.
Oh God, no! The character is Doc Savage, because there is no way that Doc Savage was not an influence over this. Because the whole idea of Doc Savage being this adventurer scientist who had expertise in biology, medicine, invention, physics, all these things that making like rocket cars and stuff and all that. Then having his group, the five guys, the Fearsome Five,
right, who
were all experts in their own fields, and the adventures are all that Buckaroo Banzai is implied to have been on is very similar. So he's Doc Savage. It's got all the eccentricities of Doctor Who and all that stuff. It's also got but he's also Superman, and as you said, Mr. Rogers, because he's like the perfect guy, the perfect man. This like this compassionate, empathic character, but he's also a rock star. It is just, yeah. I don't know. It's just I want to love this movie so much, so desperately. It actually kind of bothers me that I don't love this movie.
And I said I liked it the best. It's the third time I saw it. It might be that I was talking to you and I wasn't completely paying attention to the movie, so I was focusing on the things that I like about it, and not really catching the things that I don't like about it, because I can ignore the bad pace when I'm talking to you for 90% of the movie.
Right. Well, that's one of the reasons I wanted to rewatch it this afternoon before recording, because I wanted to watch it by myself so I can more focus on the actual film. Mm-hmm. And we get all these stretches where my mind just starts to wander.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely.
And I can't focus on the movie, and I start realizing I have no idea what's happening because I'm not paying attention, and I'm not doing anything else. I'm literally just watching the movie. It's just, yeah. As I said, the finished film is just not equal to the sum of its parts. Aspects of it are so good, and I love, but the finished film just doesn't really work for me.
And this is a film that, I'm sure there's some people that share our opinion here, but it seems to be like either you love it or you don't. Like I feel like we have a weird reaction to it, being that we're like, oh, it should work. We like the things that it does right. We like what it's trying to do, but in the end, it doesn't work. Most people either go, oh, that's that weird movie that whatever, or think it's just the most absolute brilliant piece of hidden gem.
No, yeah, it's so tough.
I do feel like it's a shame that they didn't get to do more, that there weren't sequels.
Yeah, that bothers me. I really wish they could have actually done the sequel.
Because he obviously had more ideas for the character. And there's been comic books and there was a video game, and there was, there's been other stuff Banzai related, but few and far between.
Yeah, I don't know.
Entertainment Weekly ranked it at number 43 of their top 50 all-time cult classic movies. The film was also ranked number 21 on the magazine's Cult 25, the essential left field movie hits since '83 list. It's also on the Guardian's list of 1,000 movies to see before you die.
Yeah, the thing about the film is that it really has had a really strong cult following. I know I have friends that absolutely love this movie, and it's one of their favorite films. Mm-hmm. It's just, yeah. It actually makes me sad that I don't love the movie. Because seriously, I'm desperate to love the movie, and I can't bring myself to.
I don't have that problem with this film, but I totally know what you're talking about, because I have that problem with other films.
Because the idea is it's very similar to Big Trouble in Little China, and that is a movie I unabashedly love. And I don't know, it's just everything about this movie says this is something I am going to love. And that the finished film doesn't work for me is just heartbreaking. It's because I really want to love it. I keep mentioning that over and over and over.
Yeah, I mean, I'm
a broken record. I gotta stop saying that.
I'm gonna compare it. I'm gonna compare it to Big Trouble. As I said before, both films are films that it's a bunch of stuff that I like in a total package that never clicks for me. Now, if I got to compare the two, I like Big Trouble a lot more than I like this. So even though I only gave Big Trouble 3 stars and said it's a film I like but I don't love, I definitely like it better than this. But this has the potential, it's just unlived potential. Whereas I think Big Trouble actually lives up to its potential. It's just, there's just an intangible that never connects with me. Or that, there's just something there that's not quite right. this has more glaring problem. Like I can't tell you what my problem with Big Trouble is. Like just something about it just doesn't work for me. I can tell you what my problems with this film is, and a lot of it has to do with the technical aspects, and a lot of it has to do with the pacing.
Yeah.
I also feel like Penny being the randomly being the long lost twin sister of his dead wife just is cheap writing. Like I don't even know where that has that. I don't even think that pays off in the movie because he ends up with her. I think it would have been much better if it would have been like just if she had been a girl who just reminded him of everything he liked about his wife, and so she was a similar type girl who
even if she was identical,
right, but like, that she was a similar type girl that he could invest his emotion into because it's establishing, oh, this is the type of girl he likes. But for it to actually be the long lost twin sister of his wife just feels like a stretch too far, you know? And for no reason. Like I don't think there's a payoff to it.
No, I don't think it is because the revelation is kind of glossed over.
And frankly makes his interest in her at the end of the movie a little weird.
It's almost like, are you suggesting it's shades of Vertigo?
Yeah, I mean, kind of, sorta. I mean, it's just like
slightly creepy.
You get that it's not the same girl, right, Buckaroo? I mean, but there's other things in this.
Much, but yeah,
there's other things in this that I wanted to mention, like the fact that the we kept calling the oscillation overthruster the other night when we were watching it. We kept calling it the flux capacitor.
Oh, yeah. Oh, there is no way this movie was not an influence over Back to the Future. The very nature of the rocket car at the beginning, it looks like it doesn't take much to say
it's like a prototype.
It's basically a prototype for the DeLorean from Back to the Future. And then we get the similar effect, whereas the DeLorean, whenever it breaks the time barrier, it leaves the streaks of fire.
Right.
Whereas this is shooting like a laser beam that's almost traveling across. Whenever it breaks through the mountain, we get this laser beam effect that like it's projecting a laser beam ahead of itself that is traveling.
Yeah. Well, it leaves you see the tire trail going up to the side of the mountain too.
Oh yeah.
You know, so there's a ton of possible things that Back to the Future was influenced on by this. Wikipedia says that the flux capacitor was actually designed off of the oscillator, the oscillation overthruster, but it also has no citation on that. So,
but it has to be because the flux capacitor is in the car between the two seats, and you have to turn over your right shoulder if you're in the driver's seat to fiddle with it, which is exactly what he does in this movie. And then the panels and stuff that are on the car that he's flipping the buttons and everything, and the readout in that is all very similar.
Right.
Christopher Lloyd's in both movies, for crying out loud.
You're right. And we were talking about the technical aspects, so let me since we're jumping all over here, I'm just trying to remember everything I wanted to get in. Like at the end when they're in the spaceship, like it's a really good rear projection matte painting blue screen type composite shot. It's just too bad that the spaceship looks so crummy. Like, it's a model, and granted, all the ships in Star Trek and Star Wars at the time were models, but the actual photography of the ship and its movements seem like a plastic toy on a string, herky-jerky. But it's within the scene that looks really well, the background looks really well and everything, and it's put in well. You know, so it's like, it's close on one hand, but then not on another, you know? I think most of the Electroid makeup looks really, really bad. It's just cheap, plasticky looking.
It basically looks like they're wearing Halloween masks.
Right. You know, but at the same time, like the lights when the car goes into the mountain and some of the other special effects throughout the movie look really good. There's tons of really good special effects in this movie and a bunch of really bad special effects in this movie.
It's very hit or miss on all aspects. Yeah, I'm glancing over my stuff. Oh gosh, yeah. There was one gag that I never noticed before, but that I saw when I rewatched it a couple hours ago, and I actually laughed out loud, which is whenever it's the nighttime, and you know how the scene where you had the two hunters find the pod?
Yeah.
And then the evil red Electroids show up, you know, Christopher Lloyd and Vincent Schiavelli, and it's Dan Hedaya, I think. Yeah, he is the third one, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And they show up, and then Buckaroo ends up there, and he's spying through the bushes, watching them. And all of a sudden, Vincent Schiavelli is behind him and says, "Oh, hey, Buckaroo Banzai!" And Banzai turns around and kicks him in the nuts.
Yeah.
And he's just, oh! I'm watching it and go, I wasn't expecting it. I don't know why I don't remember that, but I just started laughing.
There's a couple of really good jokes that I really, really like in the movie. I love when he gets the zapped and he gets the information, and then he writes the information down on his hand, and then he sees Hikita, and he goes, "What's this?" And he holds his hand up, and Hikita goes, "It's your hand, Buckaroo."
I like the idea whenever they go to visit Polly at the prison, and he tells Tommy, "Let her out."
Yeah.
And Tommy's objecting to that. He goes, and then he says, "And give her your jacket." Why would I give her my jacket? Because you're perfect, Tommy. He goes, "That's true."
Yeah, that's good.
I think if there's any characters that's actually my favorite in the movie, it might be Perfect Tommy.
Perfect Tommy's interesting for sure.
I just find him funny.
Yeah, no, he's funny.
Very deadpan.
And then you got, like I said, we're kind of jumping around. You got Lithgow is completely over the top in this.
Oh gosh.
To the point, like, is his accent racist? Does it age well?
Okay, I have two things about Lithgow. One is, how old is the character supposed to be?
Okay, I was going to mention that. They don't seem like any of the Johns, any of the Red Lectroids, age. And it seems like nobody notices that. We get a guy playing a young version of Hikita with Lizardo in the past. And then Lizardo, basically, he's slightly grayed, but basically looks the same. And Hikito looks like the withered old Japanese sensei type character by the end of the movie.
Yeah, Robert Ito. I know who Robert Ito is because he played Sam, the sidekick, on Quincy back in the 70s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's supposed to be 40 years later, and Lithgow's character, Lizardo, was in his 30s back in 1938, and he hasn't aged, except for his teeth are worse. That's like it.
Yeah, but that could be the fact that they don't take care of themselves.
Right.
Like they're just completely disgusting.
And I'm blown away that he is supposed to be in a mental hospital for the criminally insane, and there seems to be no security. And it seems like he can easily open his windows and just step out.
Well, I get the idea that nobody there takes him seriously. So.
Yeah, well, that would make sense. Maybe after 4 decades, they just don't think of him as, or 3 decades, they just don't think of him as a threat at that point.
Right.
Until he goes nuts. The other aspect is just at the climax or just before the climax of the film, at the beginning of the third act, whenever he starts addressing the red Lectroids, I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right.
That's right. Yeah, Lectroids is right.
When he addresses them from high up, and he's suddenly wearing that jacket, and he's got the fake pins.
Yeah, like the medals
and that.
Yeah.
And I'm watching him going, oh my god, he's totally doing Mussolini.
Yeah, with the terrible over-the-top Italian accent. And
I thought it was funny.
No, it is funny.
I'm going, John Lithgow's playing Mussolini in this movie now. It's nuts.
Other things that I really like something happened to the president. They don't ever tell us what, but he's in that back traction thing the whole movie. And I feel like that's from a previous adventure.
The thing I can't get over is that the actor who plays the president, and
Ronald Lacey.
is Ronald Lacey, is the same actor who played Toth, I can never pronounce it, from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Right.
The creepy German SS officer. Really, I guess you would say that the character in Raiders was kind of a takeoff of you know who I'm talking about, horror actor from 30s and 40s. I know his name. It just slipped on my head.
My brain's not working. Hi, this is good radio.
I know. Yeah. I know his name. I'm quickly looking it up because
Peter Lorre.
Peter Lorre. Thank you.
Yeah. I don't know why I couldn't think of it because I know.
Yeah, I don't know why. I know who Peter Lorre.
I'm like thinking of the episode of Abbott and Costello that Peter Lorre is on, and I'm like, and that episode is special guest, that guy's name.
Yeah, I can't believe I forgot Peter Lorre.
But yeah, it's definitely like a Peter Lorre type performance.
Right. I just want to say I can't believe I forgot Peter Lorre's name, because when I was growing up as a kid, my one uncle used to imitate him almost every single time I saw my uncle.
He's easy to do, so.
And, well, yeah, he is. And the fact is, I own several movies that star him.
Yeah, I love him in Maltese Falcon.
I have the Maltese Falcon. He's in.
He's in Casablanca, right?
Wait, what?
He's in Casablanca too, right?
I don't think he's in Casablanca. He's in Arsenic and Old Lace, which I have.
Yeah.
He's in several of the Roger Corman, Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe films, like The Raven.
Right.
Where he is the Raven, because he was a wizard who was turned into a raven. That's a great movie. That's a movie I recommend. Gosh.
Yeah, he's in Casablanca.
Okay. I couldn't remember if he was.
He's Signor Agate.
I was getting hung up on thinking that you were thinking of Claude Rains.
No, I know. I distinctly know Claude Rains is in Casablanca as well. Yes, he also was the Invisible Man. He was. If you've ever seen the original version of Casino Royale, and I don't mean the comedy version. I mean the one that was on American TV.
The Jimmy Bond version.
Yeah, he was Lashif in that.
I probably knew that, but I don't remember that.
If you grew up in the same time period that Derek and I grew up in, he's in a depiction of him is in so many like Looney Tunes cartoons.
Well,
like anytime something's macabre, or even they do him in the genie does him in Aladdin when he talks about can't bring people back from the dead. Robin Williams does him.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I don't like doing it. There, I did my Peter Lorre.
That was a really good impression, actually. I'm not going to attempt it because I don't think I can do it justice.
But yeah, the whole thing with the president, like something's going on there, and then the vice president. No, I'm sorry, not the vice president. The Secretary of Defense.
Mm-hmm.
Is he the opposite character of the Secretary of Defense from Independence Day? Because I hated the fact that, like, in Independence Day, the Secretary of Defense seems like he wants the aliens to win. It's like, he keeps saying, like, oh, we should just nuke them or whatever, but, like, and then, like, that doesn't work, and then, like, well, we should do this. Oh, well, that's not going to work. Well, we should try something, because we're all going to die if we don't try something. Like, I don't understand that character's motivation.
No, I don't either.
The Secretary...
I don't understand the Secretary of Defense in this film.
But he's a gung-ho, like, I'm going in there to see what's going on, and I'm taking my guns.
I was never completely sure what was going on. Again, I've watched the movie the other day with you, and I watched it again today, and I'm still confused as to whether or not he was against the Red Electroids or actually working with them.
No, I think he was against them.
Because I have no idea. I can't figure out the character.
I could totally see why you could get that read, though.
Because he goes into the thing and he finds Penny. I just realized I called her Polly earlier. He finds Penny tied down to the table net, and he's got a confused look on his face, but he's not asking about it.
I don't think he understands that they're aliens. I think he thinks he's dealing with his defense contractors that are supposed to be going into his plane, and because he even says at one point, like, whatever you do in your personal life is your business. When he sees Penny tied to the table, but I want to see some results. He's there to see the plane,
That character's really stupid.
and then you have Yakov Smirnoff as the national security advisor. So it's the middle of the '80s, and you have a Soviet guy, a Russian actor playing the American national security advisor.
I never actually realized that was Yakov Smirnoff.
Because he's not doing Yakov Smirnoff. He's just a Russian guy in the movie.
I thought I can't think of his name. I thought it was the other Russian actor that came up in the '80s. Ilya Baskin.
Yeah.
I thought it was him. I thought Ilya Baskin looks short in this.
Yeah, no, it's Yakov Smirnoff, but he's not doing what the country. He's just doing kind of a deadpan, normal Russian guy.
This is a really weird movie. A couple of things I wanted to mention I still have on my list here. Oh gosh, yeah, I wanted to mention Penny. One thing I think is really weird because we get glimpses of things that aren't explained that hint at previous adventures.
Right.
Then we get which is fine. I don't mind that. I think that's actually kind of helps build the reality of whatever film you're watching. But there are certain things they kind of drop stuff. Our introduction to Penny is that she is a emotionally distraught, mentally disturbed woman who tries to commit public suicide.
Right.
And that angle's never mentioned again, and it's like she's no longer suicidal or mentally ill. That's just dropped.
Right.
Which I think is really odd. And the other stuff I just wanted to quickly say about Ellen Barkin in the film is, my God, she must have had I keep imagining her having a miserable time making this movie. Although I don't know, maybe she had a really fun time, because half the stuff that she's doing seems like really fun. The other half seems horrifying, because she's strapped to this table for a significant portion of the film, or she's strapped to a chair, and she's got Vincent Schiavelli literally pawing her and ripping up her clothes and then pouring honey all over her naked shoulder. And then she's on later she's on this table and her legs are splayed, and she's, her dress is slit so that her legs up to her thighs are exposed, and she's got a tarantula crawling up her one thigh. And then there's the gross slug thing inching towards her. Then there's the moment where she almost escapes, but then she's captured by Schiavelli, and I can't remember who the other one was. It might have been Dan Hedaya. I don't know. In the sewer, and they start actually physically manhandling her and shove her into the water. I'm just, my God, the poor woman.
Use the more honey, John O'Connor.
Oh,
it's
so,
like, what?
They were so mean to her in this movie.
I always forget that, oh, wait, they're going to put ants on her. It's just like, why are they putting honey on her?
Yeah, the red ants. Why? It's supposed to be torturing her for information? Or are they just weird freaks? I don't. It's Vincent Schiavelli. He always played weird freaks, so maybe that's just it.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's weird.
The only thing about her on the Wikipedia page is it's that she describes the film as if Terry Southern had written Star Wars. None of the characters are quite what they should be, which is just my kind of thing.
But she's great in the movie. She's one of my favorite things in it, and
I feel like her character is underwritten, and like I said, the whole revelation of who she actually is, I think, is pointless. However, she herself in the performance is charming and fun. So.
Yeah, she is great in this movie. I agree 100%. Her part is underwritten. We have the whole opening thing with her being mentally ill and suicidal, which is suddenly abruptly dropped. And then the revelation of her being the sister of the dead wife, that's suddenly dropped. But she is cute. She is funny. She is charming. She's also... The thing is, this is kind of a thing you kind of get with all Ellen Barkin roles, especially back then, where just everything she does is just erotically charged.
Yeah.
And that is just, I mean, that is just all over this performance. She's possibly the most sexiest torture captive ever. But I mean,
she's the way she described the film, she's a weird sort of twist on Princess Leia.
I also kind of see it as elements of, to go with the Doc Savage, where she's kind of the Pat Savage type.
Yeah.
But she's also the Lois Lane.
Yeah, I was just going to say, or equal parts Lois Lane. So.
Yeah, I think it's elements of all that. But yeah, no, Princess Leia, that makes sense, too.
It's a weird movie, dude.
It's a bizarre film.
I'm actually glad we watched it again, because last week I said, oh, Derek's going to make me watch this movie again, and I'd planned on never watching it again. But I enjoyed watching it again, and I'm enjoying the conversation, so.
I'm actually looking to see if I can get it on Blu-ray, although I think it might be out of print, so that might be extremely expensive.
The Blu-ray that I got just came out like a year ago, and I think it was Shout. It was either Rhino or Shout Factory. So it might still be in print. I don't know.
Yeah, I'll take a look. But yeah, this is okay. We've already mentioned that with you, it might be a film where you're gonna like it more each time you watch it.
Mhm.
With me, it's a film where I love so much of it, but I can never actually love the entire film or the film as a whole. But I'm gonna keep trying, and it's kind of like I mean, just watching it again today, I was thinking to myself, if I never see the movie again, I'd probably be okay with that.
Well, that's how I felt last week.
But it's the kind of film that I just can't help but keep trying because I keep hoping it's going to click.
Well, I hadn't seen it in over a year, probably almost 2 years, and I think about it, not all the time, but I think about it regularly.
I do too. Yeah, it's one that does pop up in my head quite a bit. So I mean, it is living in my brain to some degree. But the thing is, with this podcast, I don't think we should just do episodes about movies and comics that we love. Doing the odd episode where we're going to be discussing something that we either don't like or maybe even possibly hate might actually be kind of beneficial in the future. Although I know we both
Go ahead.
we're both fond of saying on this show that we prefer to talk about the things we love.
Yeah, but at the same time, when you picked Big Trouble in Little China, I was thinking, I don't know if Derek realizes that I don't really care for this movie as much as he thinks I do. You know, but I didn't. But I was totally fine doing the episode because it makes for a conversation. So yes, I don't have a problem with it. What I don't want to do is talk about something that I absolutely hate and have no interest in ever watching again, and then being subjected to having to watch it and having a miserable time watching it and then having to talk about it. That's what I don't want to do. I didn't want to see this again because I felt like I already gave it its shot and it didn't pan out. But yes. Can you not hear me? I bet you he drops.
Oh, you're back.
No, I didn't think I went anywhere, but I'll repeat just in case.
No, I didn't hear anything after you said, because we had a bit of a break there for a moment where you said you actually don't want to watch something where you absolutely hate it and you never want to see it again. You don't want to subject yourself to it. But then I didn't hear anything after that.
Right, I'm gonna have a miserable time watching it, and then I'm gonna have a miserable time talking about it. I don't want that.
No.
This was a movie I said I was never gonna watch it again, but that was just because I felt like I gave it its shot and it didn't pan out, and I was done with it.
Right.
But I didn't have a problem.
But you didn't have a strong opinion against it.
No, not at all.
Right.
So
right.
although there are the occasional things that I like that you don't, or vice versa. So that's going to come up eventually because we've discussed this briefly on air and somewhat extensively off air. One of my all-time favorite comics is one that Derek really doesn't like. And I want to talk about it eventually on the show because it's one of my all-time favorites. And we won't name it because we'll leave that for you to decipher when we get to it.
Oh, yeah.
So there's that, And I'm sure I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but I know there's things that you like that I don't like to the same level, So, yeah, I don't have a problem with having a conversation about something we'll give it a shot,
Mm-hmm.
That all being said, 3 stars is my end result. I like this film to a degree. I don't dislike it and I don't hate it, but it just doesn't work. And it's a little frustrating that it doesn't work. But it's as you said, it's a film I want to work, and I would love if it actually worked.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I'm giving this 3 stars out of 5 myself. Again, it is a film that I love aspects of it, but I don't think the film as a whole works, and it drags far too much, which is really weird because it's not a very long movie. It's an hour and 42 minutes. But
I would have never guessed that.
It feels half an hour longer.
Yes, it does.
And I just have a hard time following the plot. There are things that happen where I don't understand what happened. Did Clancy Brown's character Rawhide die?
I think he did.
But he's at the very end credit sequence.
Right. No,
so I don't know if he died.
Right, exactly.
But is the end credit sequence part of the actual narrative? I don't know. I will say that sequence with the kind of electronic score and Buckaroo coming over the edge down into the what do you call it?
Into the aqueducts.
Aqueducts, docks, and then everyone following behind him in that, and the march. I think it's absolutely my favorite part of the movie.
That would be worth finding the soundtrack alone.
Yeah, I've
just for that music, because
yeah.
it's that whole thing is great.
Yeah, I think. And I do say that I don't think the movie completely works, but I am so glad this movie exists. My final thoughts is that I just love the idea that this movie was made, something that is so earnest and unabashedly geek, and that's what it is. This movie was such. This movie doesn't really make sense for coming out in 1984.
No, it's kind of anachronistic. It's like it should have come out like 15 years later.
Right, and I just love that it does exist. So I'm happy about that. And on that note, that is the end of this week's episode of Derek and Matt Love Comics. If you want to send us an email, let us know what you thought about this episode, have any thoughts or suggestions, or just want to say hi, you can do so at derekandmattlovecomics@gmail.com. Find us on facebook.com/derekandmatt, on Twitter @derekandmatt, Instagram @derekandmatt, on YouTube @derekandmattlovecomics. Find us on iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher, Google Play, and TuneIn, and remember to subscribe and rate us on iTunes. And for any information on the greatest comic shop in the galaxy, you can find it at galacticgregs.com. What's next on Derek and Matt Love Comics, Matt?
So I'm shaking some things up here. I want to make a quick announcement that 2 weeks from now, we may or may not have a show because I'm out of town for that weekend. So we're not promising a show, but you still might get one. It's just going to depend on how the week goes. But for next week, we moved some topics around. We had a blank week. I wasn't sure what we were going to do. I actually changed the topic mid-show. We're just going to have some fun. We're going to watch Galaxy Quest.
I literally did not know that until I scrolled up the run sheet.
Yeah, I changed it mid-show because I had the other topic that we agreed on was on the run sheet until then.
Galaxy Quest. I'm okay with that.
I thought you might be.
Music for this episode, Hero Theme and Adventure Meme by Kevin MacLeod, Incompetech.com, licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0 license. Matt, any last words?
You're thinking of Mr. Wizard.
We don't have to be mean, because remember, no matter where you go, there you are.